Chapter 261 A Passive Situation. This is bad. Mu Nujiao had a stern look on her face. Mu Ningzhu alone was more than enough to give them a headache, and now a summoner mage capable of controlling a warrior-level creature had also joined the battle. The strength of a warrior-level creature was utterly terrifying. If they weren't careful, all of them together would have trouble facing it, not to mention that no equipment was allowed to be used in the battle. It was quite ridiculous to fight against a warrior-level creature without any equipment. "I'll try my best to hold it off, while you guys figure out a way to break through," Mu Nujiao said. She was definitely the best candidate among them to pin down the enemy for the time being with her plant element, but she would not be able to hold for too long. Mu Nujiao used wind track at the same time. She began to worry when she realized every step she took was sticking to the ice. A warrior-level creature was difficult enough to deal with, and now even her speed was being affected. The violent Mark Wolf's first target turned out to be Shen Mingxiao, who was the closest to it. Shen Mingxiao had ventured very deep into enemy territory. He would be able to escape if his wind track were slightly faster, but a basic level wind spell was nowhere enough to handle the violent Mark Wolf. Shen Mingxiao immediately felt greatly threatened when the violent Mark Wolf lunged toward him. Vine trap. Mu Nujiao immediately waved her hand, realizing the dangerous situation Shen Mingxiao was in. She positioned a vine right across where the violent Mark Wolf would run. The vine was not obvious at all. As the violent Mark Wolf stepped on it, a sturdy prison of vines immediately grew out from it, aiming to entrap the creature within. However, as the vines were reaching for the violent Mark Wolf's limbs, it suddenly increased its pace. It had managed to leave the range of the vines before they could entrap it. As a result, the vines became totally useless, leaving a frown on Mu Nujiao's face. There was no way she could use an intermediate-level spell now. It would trap Shen Mingxiao with the violent Mark Wolf inside a giant cage made of plants, which was no different from sending him into the wolf's mouth straight away. "Ha ha ha! It's like a game of cat and mice." Lu Zhenga burst out laughing, watching Shen Mingxiao running for his life. He initially thought the guy would have some tricks up in his sleeves. It turned out that the people of the Mingzhu University were only good with their talk. It was stunning how they were sending such ordinary students to represent them twice. Earth Wave. The young man called Xiao Feng finally completed his basic level spell. He definitely knew how to throw stones at someone who had fallen down a well. Shen Mingxiao was already having a hard time being chased around by the violent Mark Wolf, and yet he still tried to drag him in the opposite direction he was running in with his spell. Although Shen Mingxiao never stopped moving forward, due to the displacement of the ground, the distance between him and the violent Mark Wolf gradually reduced. The violent Mark Wolf suddenly leapt into the air. The blue runes on its body glowed brilliantly. It leapt right above Shen Mingxiao's head and dived down, extending its limbs. The glowing runes on its body seemed to multiply its strength a few times its actual size, as if it had transformed into a giant battle axe. Bang! As it landed, the ground cracked open like a giant spider web, while the impact produced a shockwave filled with flying stones. Shen Mingxiao managed to dodge the attack, but the shockwave from the impact still sent him helplessly into the air. Shen Mingxiao totally lost his balance. The force of the impact caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood, and he slammed into the ground close to the boundaries of the barrier. Luckily, Shen Mingxiao's second element was water, thus he was able to cast a water barrier on himself in the nick of time. Otherwise, the damage would have killed him. It took Shen Mingxiao quite a while to rise from the ground. Meanwhile, the violent Mark Wolf did not give him any chance to catch his breath. Despite standing 50 meters away from him, it opened its mouth wide and bit forward, tearing at the space in front of it. As it clenched its teeth, Shen Mingxiao immediately noticed a row of giant teeth appearing right beside him. He could feel his scalp going numb as they grew more defined. They were the fangs of the violent Mark Wolf. Shen Mingxiao could not understand how it could attack from so far away. How could it possibly bite him from such a great distance? Sacred shield protection. When the fangs were closing on him, Song Sha's rather masculine voice rang out. A golden light flickered close to Shen Mingxiao's position. It formed a golden shield wrapping around Shen Mingxiao's figure. The fangs ended up crushing down on the light, resulting in a clanking sound. The sacred shield shook vigorously from the bite, while its glow significantly dimmed. Meanwhile, the violent Mark Wolf seemed quite frustrated that its attack was nullified, and fixed its gaze onto Song Sha. Shen Mingxiao was safe for now, but Song Sha, who had saved his life, immediately replaced him as the next target for the beast. Mu Nujiao also stepped forward to lend a hand. She continuously altered her position with her wind element while harassing the violent Mark Wolf, forcing it to focus its attacks on her. That alone is enough to give them a hard time. Should I even do anything further? Xiao Feng wondered snidely. Let's finish them all now, Ming Kong said. They took their time arranging their nebulas while their enemies were occupied with handling the violent Mark Wolf. A purple nebula and a blue nebula, which were the lightning element and the wind element respectively, began to arise. The duo were actually drawing the patterns at a fast pace, and finished half of them within the blink of an eye. Once the two intermediate spells were cast at Mu Nujiao and Shen Mingxiao, they would not be able to defend themselves. The target of the lightning spell turned out to be Shen Mingxiao. The glow of the sacred shield wrapping around Shen Mingxiao's figure was already significantly dimmer, thus the strike immediately smashed him into the ground. On the other hand, the tornado seemed to be targeting Mo Fan and Song Sha. Song Sha had used her light magic on Shen Mingxiao, thus leaving her in a delicate situation. Luckily, Mo Fan had managed to summon his spirit wolf in time, which carried them away and ran wildly around to dodge the tornado. We can't let this continue, we're being too passive. Song Sha jumped down from the back of the spirit wolf and glanced at the 4 students from the Imperial College who were still standing at the same spot since the start of the battle. Shen Mingxiao, are you alive or not? If you're not dead yet, hurry up and get your ass together. You, Mu Nujiao, and my spirit wolf will deal with the violent Mark Wolf. Mo Fan called out to Shen Mingxiao. It went without saying that Shen Mingxiao was still able to move. The defensive capabilities of the sacred shield were indeed impressive, although he could still sense a slight shudder in his bones. Don't you think highly of yourself? Shen Mingxiao cursed in an unpleasant manner. What's with the nonsense under such circumstances? Just follow Mo Fan's instructions. Song Sha snapped. Shen Mingxiao did not dare to say anything further. After all, Mu Nujiao would not be able to hold out much longer. Chapter 262 Show me your true strength. Mo Fan knew that even with them teaming up, they would not stand a chance against the violent Mark Wolf. Therefore, he had sent his spirit wolf to assist them, as he assumed that the two together with the beast would not be defeated so easily. As a matter of fact, in Mo Fan's opinion, the violent Mark Wolf's strength was weaker than that of the Mother Skin Scale Phantom and Cursed Beast he had encountered before. That being said, a warrior-level creature was naturally stronger than an intermediate magician by a significant margin. Without sufficient equipment or some special abilities, it was impossible to win against the creature. Dean Xiao, I wouldn't try so hard if it weren't for the benefits you've given me. Mo Fan mumbled to himself as he glanced at the focus necklace around his neck. Mo Fan could not care less about the reputation of their school, but since he had promised Dean Xiao and the elemental director, he had to keep his word. Song Sha, you will handle that wind magician. If possible, try and stand behind me and protect me with the sacred shield, Mo Fan said to Song Sha who was beside him. Song Sha nodded and repositioned herself behind Mo Fan. Just as she set a star in place in her nebula, she suddenly felt a chill in her surroundings. Crap! Song Sha cried out in shock. Back off, quick! Mo Fan blurted out as he sensed the dropping temperature in the surroundings. Song Sha moved backward rapidly. As she withdrew herself from the icy area, she realized that the icy elemental energy was not actually targeting her. Bang! Bang! The frozen ground suddenly cracked open, and several thick chains of ice sprang out from under it. A loud clank was heard as they collided with each other. Song Sha stared at the ice chains in astonishment. She tried to summon the sacred shield for protection, but it was too late. She could not do anything but watch Mo Fan being entrapped within the blink of an eye, with no chance of escaping. Clank! 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 The chains continued to wrap around him, forming a few layers around Mo Fan's figure. A moment later, Mo Fan was totally locked down by the chain, as if he had turned into a frozen mummy, and the ice elemental force crazily surged toward him. The other ends of the chains slowly rose from the ground, held tightly by Mu Ningzhu, whose silver hair totally stood out in the middle of them. It was obvious that she was the source of the overwhelming ice elemental force. Her ice chain had obviously reached the second level, a completely different level than Luo Song's. No matter how Song Sha tried to melt them with her fire, her effort was totally in vain. Icy flakes slowly fell as her silver hair blew elegantly in the wind. Mu Ningzhu's icy and unapproachable aura was even stronger as she controlled the ice chain, as if no living man were allowed within a few kilometers of her. That's way too insane. The students stared with their eyes open wide and their jaws dropping. Most of them did not notice Mu Ningzhu drawing her stars, which implied that her control of ice magic had reached a level that she could cast it in almost an instant. The ice chains that she had summoned were quite spectacular. Due to her pure lineage, tiny ice flakes were forming around the chains as they froze the air nearby. That being said, the flakes were not just mere decorations. They were in fact sharp as thorns. In other words, if Mu Ningzhu were planning to deal a killing blow, the thorns would not only be floating in the air. They would combine with the chains and pierce the person they were trapping to death. On the other side, the team of Mu Nujiao, Shen Mingxiao, and the Spirit Wolf could barely hold off against the violent Mark Wolf. Mo Fan was already trapped by the chains, and Song Sha behind him was totally incapable of freeing him. It seemed like the battle had almost come to an end, way faster than everyone expected. Mr. Ji Yu Han, Mr. Li Jing, and Mrs. Chu Yuha exchanged glances with one another. They did predict the loss, but they never thought the difference in strength would be so bizarre. That ice maga is too terrifying. If we were to face her in the last round, the battle would be one-sided, too. Peng Liang shuddered. Zhao Manting remained silent. His eyes were fixed on the chains. He could not believe that someone as strong as Mo Fan would stand no chance against that mad woman. Mo Fan had actually defeated the Mother Skin Scale Phantom on his own, thus Zhao Manting found it hard to believe that he would be defeated so easily. Forget it, that might be the end of the battle, Mrs. Chu Yuha sighed. She was worried that Mo Fan could not stand the cold from being trapped inside the chains. Mr. Ji Yu Han nodded too. It was indeed a tough matchup for them to fight against a female ice maga who had learned the elemental domain, and a summoner maga who was able to control a warrior-level creature. "Teacher, please wait for a little longer," Zhao Manting blurted out. "Is there any point for that?" Luo Song exclaimed. "Shut your mouth." Mr. Li Jing was not happy with Zhao Manting's tone. As he was about to speak, he discovered Mr. Ji Yu Han was staring in the direction of the ice chains. "What's wrong, Mr. Ji Yu Han?" Li Jing asked. "Fire. I can sense the fire element, a strong fire elemental energy." "It can't be wrong." Mr. Ji Yu Han had been about to signal to the judge when he detected a slight hint of fire element energy emanating from the ice chains. The energy was ferocious, trying to break free from the firm ice chains. A line of blood could be seen dripping out slowly from the ice chains. Mr. Ji Yu Han's cultivation was relatively stronger than the others, so he could sense it. However, he still could not understand why such a fierce flame was burning inside the chains. "It looks like we can celebrate our victory today." "How boring, it's such an easy win," Lu Zhenga proclaimed, all smiles. "Captain, you should withdraw your ice now. It would be bad if he were to die from the chill," Ming Kong from the Lightning School spoke up. Mu Ningzhu ignored the comments from her teammates, continuing to hold the chains in her hand. Even though her eyes were emotionless, it was obvious that she had not dropped her guard. She continued to stare at Mo Fan, literally staring at him. Finally, she spoke with her usual pleasant voice, "Enough with the acting, show me your true strength, Mo Fan." Her eyes flickered slightly when she mentioned his name. She had no idea how long it had been since she had last called his name, nor did she expect to stumble into him during the exchange program. However, Mu Ningzhu clearly knew that Mo Fan was nowhere near as simple as he appeared on the surface. She knew this because she had witnessed his outstanding talent during the feast held by the Mu family. He had an innate dual element. Mu Ningzhu was only willing to take part in the duel for that particular reason. She was eager to witness the capabilities of a person who was considered more talented than herself. Acting? Show his true strength? The crowd was stunned hearing Mu Ningzhu's words. Was she implying that this student called Mo Fan has yet to use all his strength? However, even if he possessed a power stronger than his lightning, how could he possibly break free from the ice chains? Chapter 263 Mo Fan vs. Mu Ningzhu. "Ningzhu, what are you saying? I don't really get it. Do you know him?" Lu Zhenga asked with a stern face. The students watching the battle were puzzled. He was trapped like that. Would it make a difference if he were hiding his strength? "That's right, the battle has ended." "Hey, why am I seeing something red?" Like blood? Mingkong asked suddenly. Red like blood? The area covered with ice was dyed a bright red, which did look like blood from afar. However, it was way hotter than blood. Crack! Crack! Cracks began to appear on the firm ice chains, tiny at the beginning, but as more red spread out from inside, they spread rapidly across the surface. Bang! There was a loud blast as the ice chains finally could not hold the rumbling energy within. As soon as the ice chains shattered, flames that looked like fiery roses burst out, pouring onto the ice on the ground. They sizzled as they battled against the broken ice chains. A figure slowly walked out from the pool of fire. He was the source of the flames capable of melting the ice chains. His entire figure was engulfed in red flames, like the Emperor of Fire walking on lava as he entered the limelight. The rolling flames continued to drive the ice zone away. Although the ice zone had covered the entire battleground, in that particular area, the ice was completely melted away by the flame. The figure inside the fire slowly revealed his appearance. However, no one could believe what they saw. Is that Mo Fan? Zhao Manting, Zheng Bingxiao, Mr. Ji Yu Han, and Mrs. Chu Yu Ha stared with blank faces. Even the people from the Imperial College were pop-eyed. If they weren't mistaken, this guy called Mo Fan had already used his lightning and summoning spells. Despite that, he was currently controlling the fire element, and it appeared that he was quite an expert with it, too. Song Sha's fire had no chance against Mu Ningzhu's ice domain and spirit-grade ice seed, so she was unable to fully utilize her fire's power. On the other hand, the flame engulfing Mo Fan did not seem to be afraid of Mu Ningzhu's ice seed from her bloodline. The fire was also spirit-grade. Three elements. Mo Fan has 3 elements, someone from the crowd cried out in disbelief. A great uproar filled the entire place. Only magicians who had achieved the advanced level could control 3 different elements. It was clear that he had yet to achieve the advanced level, and yet he was able to use 3 different elements. Could it be that he had 2 elements innately? Having 2 elements since he was born, that was surely some talent that everyone would be jealous of. As the ferocious flames burned madly, Mo Fan walked out from the area on a carpet of flame. No matter how unbelievable it was, a magician with 3 elements was standing right in front of them. Under the glow from the spirit-grade fire, Mo Fan's fiery eyes were showing a hint of vice. He was staring at the icy, noble Mu Ningzhu with a wicked grin. I thought you would go easy on your boyfriend. It's such a surprise that you were actually being serious. Mo Fan shrugged off the ice flakes on his shoulder, which quickly evaporated in the fire. Mu Ningzhu was already used to his nonsense, so she did not even try to refute him. She proceeded to cast an ice veil, preventing Mo Fan's reckless rose flame from dealing her a surprise attack. Due to her element, she was not really a fan of fire, as it would make her uncomfortable. Boyfriend? Lu Zhenga totally lost his mind on hearing this. That turned out to be the greatest shock to him. Only he knew that he was seriously attracted to Mu Ningzhu. Mu Ningzhu did not bother explaining the situation. She could already sense the danger posed by Mo Fan's spirit-grade fire. If she did not do something quickly, it would be impossible for her to remain unharmed by his fire. I know you're just trying to test my strength. That being said, you've been working so hard already, how is it acceptable for me to be weak? Since you're asking me to use my true strength, I'm more than happy to do so. Mo Fan said with a broad smile. A moment later, the flame completely devoured his entire face, together with his malevolent smirk. The words felt like an emperor giving out an order to his officials and soldiers. The flames obeyed his command and rapidly compressed into a bracelet on his wrist, pulsing to his heartbeat. Even Song Sha, who was standing behind Mo Fan, could sense the regality of the rose flame, to the extent that her fire had an urge to submit to its will. Mo Fan's fire was completely withdrawn. Only his sturdy figure remained standing, his right hand covered in burning flame. Rose flame. Fiery fist. Groundbreak. Each chant was louder than the one before, with each wave of flames taller than the previous. Mo Fan completely unleashed the energy he had accumulated in his fist into the ground. The impact from the fiery energy instantly shattered the ground, and terrifying flames erupted. The fire danced wildly, like burning petals. Fiery pillars rose into the sky, hot enough to melt everything. The erupting lava caused the groundbreak to spread even further, resulting in a great visual display. Apart from Lu Zhenga, The rest of the students from the Imperial College were completely overwhelmed by the flames. Ming Kong and Xiao Feng panicked. They did not expect Mo Fan's fire to be so unstoppable. Xiao Feng's second element was earth element, so he swiftly reacted by casting a defensive spell. However, he could not make it in time. His figure was completely overcome by the flame before his protective spell was formed. In order to save himself, Xiao Feng was forced to use his equipment. Similarly, Ming Kong was unable to defend himself against the attack. The fiery fist and ground break were enough to overwhelm him, let alone the rose flame, which was powerful enough to burn his equipment to ashes. Fortunately, there were teachers around to keep an eye out, who would interfere once the situation got out of control. Ming Kong, who lost consciousness from the impact, was swiftly rescued by the teacher in charge. The flames had even devoured Mu Ningzhu. Lu Yiming was just about to make his move after seeing Mu Ningzhu in danger, when she whisked herself out to the boundary of the ground break with her wind track. Despite that, the flames at the boundaries were not to be underestimated. The ice veil she had produced before came in handy, serving as protection from the hungry fires. Chapter 264: A Violent Magician. The gust of wind had an azure hue to it, displaying an energy significantly greater than an ordinary blue wind element. Mu Ningzhu's speed surpassed those who also possessed an ordinary wind element. The wind element was considered quite common among the elements, but it was also the most flexible. Mu Ningzhu moved swiftly, as if she had suddenly turned as light as a feather, her movements unpredictable. She nimbly dodged the ground break, while the spitting flames around her were extinguished by the ice veil she had set up previously. She had already predicted the spells Mo Fan would cast. Wind Disc, Sky Snare. Everyone was shocked at how fast Mu Ningzhu was able to align her stars. She did not even pause to cast them. The azure gust of wind slowly lifted her figure, leaving her slightly afloat. Her long silver hair moved elegantly in the air, while the veil which was initially hanging before her lifted, revealing her close to perfect face. Her glistening eyes were blue in color, like a wind elf. For a second, an azure aura with a diameter of 20 meters could be seen circulating her glamorous physique, visible in the flicker from her eyes. The aura was the reason why she was afloat in the air. It transformed Mu Ningzhu, her hands crossed in front of her chest, from an ice sorceress to a wind fairy, so noble and pure that no one dared to have any disrespectful thoughts. A spirit-grade wind seed. Our captain was forced to use her second element. This is the end for that guy Mo Fan. In terms of aura, Mu Ningzhu's wind totally crushed the rest of the wind magicians. What was more terrifying was that the wind energy had already gathered around the area Mo Fan was under the command of its empress. It was nothing like the wind disc tornado. At least in the case of wind disc tornado, people would still have some time to react. As long as you could run faster than the tornado, you would be fine. That was not the case for the second tier of the wind disc, Sky Snare. It would summon a spinning giant tornado with a diameter of 20 meters right where the target was. The moment it was cast, it would form a fast spinning wall of wind around the target. Unless the target could break through the wall of wind with brute force, it would end up being thrown against the wind wall by the blowing wind and suffer incredible injuries. If the target somehow survived, the final fling would send it high up into the air. The drop from such a height was more than enough to shatter all its bones. Such was the strength of the wind disc, Sky Snare. In addition, Mu Ningzhu was also controlling a spirit-grade wind seed, and so the power of the spell was even more terrifying after being multiplied. The other intermediate magicians nearby had already backed off, as this level of battle had gone totally beyond their capabilities. Indeed, both the second-tier intermediate spells or the spirit-grade element seeds were enough to wipe them all, and when the two were stacked together, the damage they dealt would easily be more than the students could handle. Somehow, the whole battle had turned into a duel between Mo Fan and Mu Ningzhu, and the latter totally had the upper hand due to her two spirit-grade element seeds. The almighty wind disc, Sky Snare, had thoroughly confined Mo Fan inside. He looked extremely tiny inside the giant tornado. Fiery fist, exploding heaven. Mo Fan was not willing to give up without putting up a fight, despite finding himself trapped within the cage of wind. The only way to break through was to target the walls that were trapping him. As such, he would have to blow them apart before the tornado shrank to his size. It went without saying that Mo Fan was extremely familiar with using the first-tier intermediate fire spell. He could easily throw a few punches after adjusting his energy. The rose flame on his wrist grew restless as the fist of exploding heaven collided with the spinning wall of wind. Bang! It was obvious that the great tornado was shaking. Some parts of it were dislocated too, but new wind energy immediately filled the gap as Mu Ningzhu maintained the shape of the tornado. Again, fiery fist. As the punch was thrown, flames engulfed his fist once more. The fiery fist collided with the shrieking wind wall with tremendous might once again. The wind was already disrupted after the first punch. When the second punch collided with it, the tornado surrounding Mo Fan buckled heavily. Begone! Mo Fan was completely unstoppable. Others might already be panting heavily after executing an intermediate spell, but he did not even show any intentions of preserving his energy. He continued to draw energy from the fire nebula, launching a third punch at the tornado. The impact from the third collision finally shattered the tornado, and it dissipated in all directions in random whorls of protest. As the wind died away, lumps of dust fell from the sky, stacking up under Mo Fan's feet. Mo Fan had the crowd's complete attention. The flames on his wrist had yet to extinguish completely. His fiery eyes were full of emotion, while his unyielding stance delivered a strong statement to everyone. Did he just break through a spirit-grade tornado, just like that? No one had ever seen a magician more violent than this Mo Fan. Most of the people subconsciously assumed that they would need to rely on defensive methods to nullify such a destructive spell. Even though Mo Fan had 3 different elements, none of them was suitable for defense. To their utter surprise, he had actually managed to overcome Mu Ningzhu's intermediate wind spell with an even stronger attack. The final boss of the Pearl Institute, as expected of someone who was given that title. I'm utterly impressed. Peng Liang, the student from the Shadow School, had completely dropped his jaw. On the other side, Zhao Manting had actually guessed that Mo Fan had the fire element, but after witnessing the battle, he finally knew how right he was. He was no longer surprised that Mo Fan had actually managed to kill the Motherskin Scale Phantom. It took Mr. Ji Yu Han, Mrs. Chu Yuha, and Mr. Li Jing quite a while to collect their thoughts. They finally understood why Dean Xiao and director Zhou Zhenhua had expended such efforts to bring Mo Fan in. As for coming to the Imperial College to be wrecked, or to have a friendly duel, it was obvious that Mo Fan was here to humiliate them. 2 spirit-grade seeds. It looks like I've made the right choice coming to the Imperial College. At least there's someone worthy to fight against me. As Mo Fan had exposed his secret already, there was no reason to hide it any further. More importantly, there weren't too many students from the Pearl Institute who could force Mo Fan to use all his strength. Although it turned out that Mu Ningzhu could match his strength, the truth was, she was not the only one with 2 spirit-grade seeds.